guys, welcome back to a new tutorial video. And I'm really excited today because I just got my new workstation desk all the way from Spain. The first way that I'm going to christen this new workstation is to make a video on a song that was written by a friend of mine who's also a piano student. And he wanted to know how he might play some more juicy sort of fills and maybe some, not exactly substitutions, but more harmonic movement and other slick sort of ideas that one could use. And he wrote this song. That's the song we're going to work on today. It's called Why Don't You? It's really nice. It's kind of like a D'Angelo style R&B pop kind of thing. And he's a great singer too. Check out his album. It's called Portraits, Mark Warren. And we're going to dive in today. I'm going to show you and Mark and everybody else how to play interesting and more musically fun types of things over otherwise simple songs. All right, now, as you can see, it starts out with just the 1 and the 4 chords, G major 7 and C. And then it goes to an F7 there. All right, the voicing I'm using is F, E flat, A, and D. You can slide in a G in there for some extra color. Okay, so pretty straightforward in the beginning. We're just kind of alternating between G and C.
Now it seems we have to decide what to do. And now I'm sitting here listening to you play with me, sing with me, unbelievably sad. Why don't you know?
Right there, we have kind of a walk up from the E flat major 7 to the F major 7 to a G major 7. All right, and that is a pretty common cadence. You could call it a flat 6, flat 7, 1 cadence. It's actually really nice, and there's a couple ways to voice that. Playing in my left hand, I like to avoid octaves typically, especially if I'm playing with a bass player, because the bass player is already playing the root. So what I like to do, if I am going to play the root with a bass player, or even by myself, I like to play the shell voicings. That would be the root and the 7th in my left hand. And then in my right hand, I like to play 3-note rootless voicings. So it's basically just a voicing without the root. So I might play something like this, B flat, D, and G. And if I want to get fancy, I can add the 9 in there, the F, right? And then I have a nice, lush voicing where I'm not doubling any notes. And if I keep that shape all the way up, it sounds pretty good. All right, now that's not the only way you can voice it. You could also do like, all right, and then have the 7th be the bottom note. There's all kinds of ways you can voice them. I'm not going to go over every way to voice it, but consider, are you doubling notes? And if you are, it's not the end of the world, but as piano players, we have so many options. Why would we need to double notes? We could play, instead of the root, we could play the 9th, and so on. All right, so a little note about that. Let's go on here.
Why would you say somehow it hurts so much more every time you tell me to just go away? I just don't know.
So there I just did simple octaves. Now, if you want to, octaves are always great, but if you want to make it even more lush, you can add some notes in between. So you can add some like, right, it's a C major chord, so you can add like the 3rd and the 5th. And then you can just sort of sequence, and by that I mean keep the shape, but you're just going down, right? In this case, I'm keeping the 3rd and the 5th in the middle, and I'm just going down. I'm kind of keeping that shape going down. Okay. Now, there's another thing you can do to make it smoother, make it feel smooth, and that is to kind of lead into the next chord with some bass action, some moving bass notes. So, okay. So there, I did a very common thing in my right hand, which is alternating between G and A minor chords, which is a very gospel sound, right? So that's what you can do whenever you are walking up to that C major chord, right? Right? Simply, I'm just walking up in steps in the left hand, G, A, B, C. And in the right hand, I'm playing G, A minor, G, and then C, our next chord. All right. And sometimes you'll see me doing things like this. You can do this little flutter, right, in the middle. It's a kind of a gospel-y sort of flutter. That middle note, right? Just go up and then back down again. So this is sequencing. And so on, right? So that'll be able to, that'll make you be able to give these colors that you want, right? And then when it comes to the C major one, when you're sequencing there, you can sequence between D major triads, right? Because the C major 7 has that F sharp in that tonality usually, right? Right, as a passing tone. So say that you're doing, say that you're playing C major 7, you've got a C major shelf voicing in the left hand, and you're sequencing. You could start by sequencing between E minor and D triads. All right, just going up to the next inversion. Okay, that's nice and pretty actually. So earlier I talked about how we can walk up to the 4 chord by walking up in the left hand and sequencing in the right hand between G and A minor chords, like this. All right, that is one way of preparing the next chord. And you'll hear musicians do this all the time, gospel musicians, really good pop musicians, and of course jazz musicians, where they won't go straight to the next chord, right? Where there's nothing wrong with that, but what's cool and how you can make it tastier, like we're talking about today, is by preparing the next chord. And there's all kinds of ways to do that. And one way to do that is by playing a 2-5-1 to the next chord. So a 2-5-1, if you're not familiar with it, it's a cadence progression that leads us to somewhere. In this case, the C major 7 chord. All right, and if you are familiar with it, that's great. Hopefully you can play a 2-5-1 in multiple keys. But in this case, a 2-5-1 in the C major key area that we're heading to would be D minor 7, G7, C major 7. Okay, so. Right? There's all kinds of ways you can do it, but you just want to make sure that however you do it, that it fits into the meter. In this case, it would be 6/8. So try practicing with a metronome, it's very important, to make sure that you're not dropping beats or adding beats to the measure. That's one way to do it. You could just play a regular old 2-5-1, D minor 7, G7, C major 7. Another hip way to do it is instead of playing the G7 chord, you can play a tritone substitution. So if you don't know what tritone substitutions are, again, there's hundreds of YouTube videos on that, and I'll probably make a video about it at some point. There's all kinds of resources out there. But basically, it's the chord that's a tritone away from the original chord. Tritone being 3 whole steps. So, instead of G7, we could play D flat 7, and we can add a sharp 11 there, or a sharp 5, A natural. If your top note is C for the D minor 7 chord, then you might want to just go down a half step. if your top note is A for the D minor 7 chord, then you could choose to go up or down for the top voice of the next chord. So you could make the top voice for the D flat 7 chord be B, or you could go down to G. Right, there's all kinds of options there. Either sharp 9, right? So how you voice that tritone sub is going to depend largely on your top voice in your right hand. Okay? So there's all kinds of, like I said, there's all kinds of possibilities here. The third possibility is to just skip the 2 chord and go straight to the tritone sub, right? And you'll hear all kinds of musicians do this. And that's cool because you're approaching that 4 chord from a half step above, which is a very common thing. So, why don't you know I'm here to stay, right? So there, I didn't even play the 2 chord, I just went to the D flat 7 chord. All right, and that reminds me about kind of stopping, right? So this is kind of an arranging thing, but you'll hear this in D'Angelo and all kinds of other R&B recordings where the musicians will kind of stop there, right? So they will kind of add some space. That's something that if you are using that technique, it's cool. It can be cool to kind of slide that tritone sub into the next chord. So that kind of gives you 3 options there. Play the 2-5 chord, 2-5 progression, leading to the C major, or you can play 2 flat 5 or sharp 4, basically the tritone sub leading to the 4 chord. Or you could just skip the 2 chord altogether and play that D flat 7 chord leading to the C chord. So I hope that gives you a smorgasbord of things to work with, and this is just really the tip of the iceberg. There are so many things you can do to make your playing more tasty when it comes to even just 2 chords. And there's actually more than 2 chords in this song. There's a whole bridge part, and then it shakes it up in the very last verse and kind of adds some inversions and things like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of play over the rest of the song and just kind of play freely and do some techniques and things that I would do, and hopefully you might be able to take some of these things and use them in your own playing. All right, here we go.
So here I am. Tell me what to do. But please stop telling me to take the easy way out by just leaving you. You know I can't go. I'm in way too deep. But now I'm laying here listening to you in the other room, breaking down, getting too weak. Why don't you know I'm here to stay? I'd rather be with you through the pain than with anybody else anyway. You might have changed. You may be completely different than the girl I married. But just the same, I made a vow to leave you, even when it's scary. Why don't you know I'm here to stay? So please stop telling me every time it's hard that I should just go away.